Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm here outside the Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, Queens in New York City. And I'm here to check out the Recording the Ride exhibit, which is about the history of skateboard videos in the early 90s and mid 90s. Maybe even the late 80s, I'm not sure. So I'm gonna go inside and check it out. So funnily, I actually used to work here at this museum a really long time ago, but not in the capacity of the museum itself, but I used to work events here probably like 10 or 12 years ago. And I don't think I've been here since, but it is an amazing space, and it's cool. This is the first time I've actually been here as a guest. And there's the exhibit right there. You can see Pat Duffy back 50ing the rail at School Q in North San Diego County in 1991. One of the many things that's surreal about this exhibit is that it's almost like going through my storage locker. Like I almost wish that they had consulted me about it. I have every one of these original 4-on-1s, including issue 1, which is with Jeremy Ray doing a 180 nose grind at UCI. On the box cover. But yeah, I have all of these. This display is really amazing. This is about Plan B Questionable, which is probably the most seminal video, well, easily, of the entire 1990s, I think. And here, this is something interesting. This is about the death of Mike Ternansky in Thrasher, and that he was actually killed in a car crash just before I moved to San Diego. So like he cast sort of a long shadow. Like when I got to SD, yeah, that was like a huge thing at the time. But he was the founder of Plan B Skateboards, and I don't know if I think that's him there in that ad. It's either him or Dave Schlossbach. I'm not sure, but I love it. Super blurry, but you can see Sean Sheffy there in the background, and I think. Yeah, this photo was taken, I think, in late 1991. It's crazy to see it blown up on a whole wall. So here on the wall is the chronology of the original Plan B trilogy, which is Questionable, that came out in the spring of 92, and Virtual Reality came out basically a year later in the spring of 93. I was in high school here in New York when those came out, and then Secondhand Smoke came out in early 1995. It came out actually after Mike Ternansky was killed in the car crash, I think which was in Poway. And I actually missed the premiere because I was here in New York with my family for Christmas, and I came back to the skate shop in San Diego called Pacific Drive, which is where all the pros hung out. And I was like, oh, suddenly there was a new Plan B video and there was a premiere, and I was like, I missed it. Like my dream was to be at a skate video premiere. That was like my biggest dream in high school, was just to be in the same milieu with all of these dudes. So here's Secondhand Smoke playing on an old school like Sharp TV VCR combo, and so I remember in 1995 walking into Pacific Drive, and this was playing on the Shop TV VCR combo. So in a way, this is like going back in time. Look at these tapes from Questionable from 91 and 92, Pat Duffy and Colin McKay. Here you have Danny Way.
You don't even know.
And I'm guessing maybe that's like a questionable master. So this here was maybe the most iconic thing ever done in the 1990s, which was Pat Duffy's backside lip slide in the rain in Northern California. Which I think this was filmed at either the very end of 91 or maybe the beginning of 92. But this was such a groundbreaking thing. So the Recording the Ride exhibit has videos grouped either by like series, like Underachievers 2 and 3. I don't think anyone has a copy of Underachievers 1. Here, these are the Transworld videos. I still have most of these cassettes. So fun fact, my college roommate, whose name was Nathan Johnson, he had 1 or 2 tricks in Greatest Hits, and he had a couple of tricks in Cinematographer. And that was a huge deal at the time, that my roommate and my best friend was like in Transworld videos. And I remember actually from Greatest Hits, he had a video sequence in Transworld, which is where they grabbed little pieces of video of like a trick and they kind of strung it together as if they were taken by like a photo camera. And he did a feeble grind backside 180 out in the middle of a flat bar in La Mesa, California. And like, I still actually have that cut out in like a scrapbook. It was like a little vertical thing in an issue of Transworld. And then here, they're all in these little like sort of discrete cubes. And here is Toy Machine, and I actually have two stories about this cube. One is, so here you can barely see it. It's not well displayed, but they have Toy Machine Heavy Metal, which came out in, I think, like early '95. And when this was being filmed, I was actually at the skate shop I mentioned before, Pacific Drive, and I saw Jamie Thomas like standing outside the skate shop with like a Hi8 camera, and he was filming something. I didn't know what was going on, and there was some dude who was doing a tray flip like at sunset on the boardwalk in Pacific Beach. Like there's like a sort of like a concrete strip right before it becomes sand. And that would turn out to be Josh Kalis's Ender, and I didn't even know that he was on Toy Machine. I think he had been on like Invisible Flow or something before then. And then here is the cassette of Welcome to Hell, and I was actually at that infamously botched premiere where Jamie Thomas was editing the video like right up until the premiere. And then his computer crashed at Tumyeto, aka Foundation, which was in Sorrento Valley, kind of near La Jolla in like North San Diego. And so like Jamie Thomas comes to the premiere and there was no video, and Chad Muska like freaked out and they got in some like huge argument. And I was there when this happened, and I think Johnny Barley was in the mix too, and like Muska curses out Jamie and Ed Templeton, who's the founder of Toy Machine, and ends up like getting kicked off, and then ends up founding Shorties with Tony Boyalos. And I was actually at his house in Pacific Beach like the week that he got on Shorties. I was there when he got his first package. So I remember, so there was no video obviously, and everyone was like furious and disappointed. So the guys from Tumyeto who were running the failed premiere, like to try and save face, they had like a notebook, and they told everybody who, when you were leaving, to write down your address like in pen and paper. And they said, they're like, we're gonna mail you a copy of the finished video. And I was like, all right, that's a pretty good consolation. But then like, I ended up having it mailed to my family's house in Brooklyn. Like, I think it came like 2 months later, like the midsummer of 1996. The premiere was in Encinitas at the La Paloma Theater in June of '96. And when the video came, not only was like Ed Templeton on the cover instead of Muska, but Muska's part had been deleted. And like, the video is still epic. It's still one of those seminal videos of the entire 1990s, and especially 1996. But like, there was so much hype about Muska being in this Toy Machine video. Like, everyone was looking for, like, San Diego was abuzz about it the entire year. And actually, the day of the premiere, Muska was skating outside Pacific Drive, and there was a giant like fire hydrant across the street. And Muska was frontside 180ing this fire hydrant, like from the sidewalk over this tall hydrant into the street, like clearing the whole other end of the sidewalk. And fun fact, I actually met Brian Anderson for the first time that day at the shop. I remember I was looking at a flyer for Welcome to Hell, and I was like, who's Brian Anderson? And then like this guy walks in the shop. I was wearing a skate shop t-shirt from here on the East Coast, and this dude who's almost maybe taller than me, and he had this like bellowing voice, he comes up to me and he's like, hey, he's like, are you from the East Coast? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm gonna go to the Welcome to Hell premiere tonight. I live here in SD. And then it turned out that he was the name on the flyer that I didn't recognize. So yeah, that was a pretty epic day. So like, also what isn't displayed is my college neighbor named Pete Lehman was in the very first Toy Machine video called Toy Machine Live, which came out in like, I think early mid '94. Unfortunately, that's not in the display. Pretty much could have some sort of anecdote about almost any display here. And I'm not saying that in terms of braggadocio, but just, I was such a, now you would call it a skate nerd, but I was such a skate head like in that time, and living in San Diego in the golden era. But here is Time Code, which was Alien Workshop's video in, I think it was also 1996. I think it came out maybe later than Welcome to Hell. I'm trying to remember. But I was actually at Sarah High School, which was a high school with all these like sort of canopy covered ledges. That was like one of the most epic ledge spots, or it was just a skate spot of any kind like there was at that time. And I was sitting there when Josh Kalis does a kickflip backside nose blunt to Fakie. And I think that was like one of his heavy tricks at the time, which that had only really been done on curbs like in 1992 and 1993, and he did it on a full height ledge. So that was like that was a pretty groundbreaking thing. And I remember when the video came out, I was like, oh my god, I was there when he did that. And that was kind of what it was like to live at that time and just to be a part of the skate world. So this display here is about Birdhouse, The End, which premiered in Santa Ana, California in 1998. Here's a description of it. Obviously, Birdhouse is Tony Hawk's skateboard company, which is still around today. And I was actually at this premiere, and I can't remember how I knew about it, how I got a ticket to it. I don't remember what the logistics were, but it was the first skate video premiere that I left San Diego County for. We went up, me and my best friend went up to Orange County while we were in college to go to The End. There was no way we were gonna miss it. And it was so epic, especially because it was all filmed on movie film, and just looked like they'd spent so much money on it. And then there was, of course, the whole Heath Kirchart, Jeremy Klein stuff with the van, which was kind of Jackass adjacent. And I guess here's a Super 16 camera that they used. I was mentioning about Toy Machine Welcome to Hell and all the hype behind it, but this was actually the 2-page spread in Transworld of Muska doing a front 50 on this crazy kink rail at San Diego High School in Encinitas, which was the same town where La Paloma Theater is, where the failed premiere was. And I remember when this came out, there's like a 4-stair or something, maybe a 5-stair, then a 2-stair, and then I think a 6-stair. And I went up there and I half-cabbed the top stairs, hopped down the 2-stair, and I board slid just the end thing, because I just wanted to do something in that world, just be somehow close to it. I lived for this world, this life. And I remember I wanted to go back up there and actually film it, but yeah. And there's actually, if you follow this, where he grinds the rail, I think that eventually led to the hallway rail, which is where the blue rail down I think it was a 10-stair, where everybody had the tricks. And then if you keep going, there was the crazy giant rail where Arto Sari almost killed himself and Flip Sari. So it was all these rails at San Diego High School were kind of all contiguous. You'd probably have pros now that could hit all 3 in a row. Although I think the 10-stair rail is long gone. In the early and mid and even into the late 1990s, as a skateboarder, skateboard videos as a medium were just everything. They were where I got my cues for the clothing I wore, the music I listened to. They just influenced me tremendously, including moving from New York to San Diego, California in mid-1994. Just as an example, one of my favorite videos of all time is Stereo, A Visual Sound, which came out in, I'm gonna say, maybe May or June of 1994. I think it was right around when I graduated high school. And because of that, freshman and sophomore year of high school, I got really into jazz music because it has an entirely jazz soundtrack. And it was totally different from, either the New York scene or the San Diego scene that kind of I came to adopt or / adopted me. And because of that video, which was created by Jason Lee, who, this is before he was a famous Hollywood actor and Scientologist, it had this whole jazz soundtrack, and I started going to thrift stores in San Diego and buying jazz records, and then I was getting jazz CDs, and it goes to show you how influential this world was. And it was, looking back, now you would say it was an entirely analog world. These were physical cassettes made with physical tape. Nothing was digital. It was all analog. Yeah, I think I was at the Misled Youth premiere. I think that was at Spreckles Theater in downtown San Diego. I think I was at that premiere. I was definitely I was at this Rhythm Genesis premiere. That is a company which of course no longer exists. That was an offshoot of Chris Miller, famous 1980s vert skaters, Planet Earth Skateboards. So Rhythm Skateboards was kind of like a sister company, akin to it was like the chocolate to their girl, which I think is actually a pretty apt analogy. But I was at this premiere, and that was made by Ty Evans before he was like a really big deal. I think that video kind of put him on the map, and it was so different because it had like loud house music, like Chemical Brothers and stuff, and like a lot of these other classics that premiered at La Paloma and Encinitas. But yeah, just wow. Just looking at these cassettes and just the titles. Now this is another super seminal video of the period, which I mentioned before, Eastern Exposure 3. And what was so important about this video was that it like turned everything on its end, because I was living in San Diego and with a bunch of roommates in a skateboard-centric apartment. We were all in college, but it was really all about just skating. And this video came out, and like it was so influential because it was like about Wallies and wall rides and all these guys, and mostly in Philadelphia, which is my hometown, riding all these big wheels. And there were guys here in New York City, where my family had moved to at the time. And so like I was in San Diego, and suddenly we were doing what was like East Coast skateboarding. Like I went out and bought some like 60 millimeter Spitfire wheels or something and started riding like a giant board because of this. I don't know why. Not sure why the edition they're showing is all in color, because part of what was groundbreaking about this video was it was all in black and white. But yeah, it was like, wow. It was such an incredibly important video. And like I mentioned before, before it became Eastern Exposure 1 and Eastern Exposure 2, which I think I'd seen part of Eastern Exposure 2 like in a skate shop here in New York City. I still to this day have never seen Eastern Exposure 1. I don't even know anything about it. I believe that it may be on YouTube kind of recently. But yeah, this exhibit is really great. And one thing that's cool is they have a big screen, like kind of like in the like sort of an auditorium style screen, although there's not really much seating, but they're playing like here is Plan B virtual reality. So yeah, all in all, this is a great exhibit. It's not that huge. I thought it actually might be bigger, but yeah, it's pretty fantastic, especially if you're like a skate history person. Now, this display is about Blind Video Days from 1991, filmed and directed by Spike Jonze, which is probably one of the most important skate videos ever made. I actually have sort of a weird thing about this. There's Jason Lee. I have this is obviously before he started stereo and created a visual sound 3 years later. But I have kind of a weird thing about this, which is that I had a disease in my knee, and I couldn't skate for like a year and a half. I had this thing it was called a growing disease, where my bones were growing faster than my muscles could handle. So I had to stop skating for a year and a half. So I actually missed Video Days when it came out. This was during the time I wasn't skating. And by the time I came back to skating was the era of Plan B questionable in 1992. So I missed skateboarding in all of 1991. And so I didn't see Video Days until like sometime in the late 1990s. But it's not a massive part of the exhibit, but here above me on the ceiling, they have a lot of decks from the early and mid-90s. And one thing I just wanted to note to viewers is like, so back in the day, brands would be ripped off. So like here you have Yoda from Star Wars, the Terminator. And here, like you would never have this today, but an old English 40-ounce graphic. And back then, skateboarding was really kind of this like outlaw underground thing where skateboard companies just would rip graphics off of corporations and major pieces of entertainment, and they would do it until they got a cease and desist letter. And the skateboard industry was so small at the time, like skateboard companies weren't worth going after. No one was gonna like, oh, we're gonna sue a skateboard company for what? Like, what money did they have? It was, skateboarding was such a small thing back then. It was such a, from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, it was kind of like a tight-knit thing. And skateboard companies could kind of get away with anything. I mean, all of the videos used copyrighted music, which you couldn't get away with that today. With, I mean, it was a completely different world. It was like, skateboarding was just its own thing. Fashion logos were ripped off. Sports team logos were ripped off. It's just the way that it was. And it was great. And I'm glad that I lived it. And this exhibit's really a really dope retrospective. Wow, that exhibit was pretty incredible, actually. It's pretty minimalist. There's not all that much that goes into it, except, I mean, it's basically based on people's personal collections of the VHS tapes and people in the industries, you know, stuff like Mike Dernansky's business card and like the original, you know, Plan B mock-up logo and everything. But wow, it still really hit home. I was kind of blown away by how much of that stuff I still actually have that was in the exhibit. And it's crazy to think that all that stuff is 30 years old, give or take now. So yeah, recording the ride at the Museum of Moving Image was pretty amazing. I think that this exhibit should go other places. Like, it should be brought to San Diego and San Francisco and Vancouver, Philadelphia, all the skate cities of the 90s. Kind of the world before Barcelona, when it was like pretty much just the United States in terms of like industry and coverage and everything. I am so glad I came here, and if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.